Hi guys. So I'm here with yet another ARC review for you guys. So thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for giving me an advanced review copy of this book. It is part of my long ARC TBR that I'm trying to get through right now. But I have to say that I really questioned whether or not I was even going to do this review. Because I am just not having a great time with this book, and I'm still struggling with it. And so I figured I might as well just make a video and explain that to you guys, so that at the very least you can go into this book with your eyes wide open. So the book that we are talking about today is Double Decker Dreams by Lindsay McMillan. This is a single POV romance. So right off the bat, if you know anything about me, you're already going, oh boy. Yes. So this is the story of Kat, and Kat is your narrator, and she is a high-powered business consultant from the States who is currently on a job in the UK in London. And she is in her 30s, and basically ever since she has been 6 years old, she has told her family, she's from the Midwest, Kalamazoo, and she's basically told them, like, I'm going to get out of this small town, I'm going to get out of the Midwest, and I'm going to be a high-powered CEO. And every decision she's made basically since then has been to get her to that place, to be a high-powered CEO. Her job is everything to her, and she is in line for a promotion. Before going to London, she also broke up with a boyfriend of a couple of years who wanted to propose, and she realized that their relationship was just basically coasting. It wasn't what she expected, and so they broke up. And so she is feeling single and ready to mingle because she is a romantic. She loves rom-coms, and she's just obsessed with the idea that her Prince Charming is out there somewhere for her. Now, even though she has been brought to the UK by her job, she is able to work from home much of the time as a business consultant. Not clear on how that works, but anyway. So she spends sometimes in between Zoom meetings staring longingly out her window. And on one of these long stares out her window, she sees a man on the top of a double-decker bus. They make eye contact, or so she feels, and she just feels this entire connection and life springing up between them. And of course that's broken when the bus, finishes that stop and then drives away. Kat then spends an aggressive amount of time making up the life and her relationship with this person. She decides his name is Alexander. He's an English peer, and he is basically making up this dream scenario featuring Alexander. And she tells this scenario to the flatmate next door to her, Jules. And Jules is happily engaged to her girlfriend, fiance, Nina. And Jules decides that she wants to meddle in Kat's love life. So she makes Kat promise to introduce herself to Alexander. So Kat finally gets up the gumption to introduce herself to Alexander, only to find out that none of her imagining is true. He is not British, he's American. His name is Rory, not Alexander. He is a school teacher, not an English peer. And the kicker, he is from the same town in the Midwest that she is from, the town she's basically allergic to and wants nothing more in life than to get away from. Rory, of course, has no idea that he has broken all of her imaginings and broken this imaginary relationship. He's just excited to meet someone from the same place that he is from. He has not really made any friends in London since he's come to teach, and he's very excited to hang out with Kat. So Kat and Rory begin to hang out, and basically this is the story of Kat realizing that all of these dreams that she's had, all of these ideas that she's had about herself and what love is, kind of need to be reoriented, is that part of the story. I have things to say about that part of the story, which I will, but I also feel that I must tell you that there is an undercurrent storyline here about what is happening to Kat at work. And this is the part that I very much wish was more obvious in this book somewhere. Kat is working for a oil company that is refusing to go green and is trying to cut like employment and stuff, and she's basically there to help them get back on money track. And Rory is also like a science teacher who's a big believer in climate change, so there's a very like bizarre, very small climate change storyline here, but anyway, not what I'm talking about. The person who runs the company that she is there to consult with is an older man who has very, very misogynistic views about women, and is very, very much trying to put the moves on Kat, to the point where there is a scene where Kat is drunk at a nightclub, and they're her like consultant job boss, so not from her company, this other company, but this guy performs some very explicit sexual harassment bordering on assault. The way that it is written, I was very uncomfortable with. I don't think you're supposed to be comfortable in the scene, but one of my immediate hang-ups with this book was the way that that scene was written and the way that it was talked about in the immediate aftermath. I feel very uncomfortable about it, and I almost just basically stopped reading right there. I actually wanted to DNF the book earlier than that, so that having then happened was like, oh, I should have listened to myself earlier. But the reason was, and the same as the reason that I kept reading, and let me explain that, is because I knew from the beginning that the whole point that this book is trying to make is that sometimes we have these expectations that are just so overboard and so out of proportion that sometimes it can be hard to see what's right in front of us. So the whole idea with the beginning of this book is that Kat just goes overboard, falling in love with an imaginary person who doesn't exist, and then being really brokenhearted and having to deal with the fact that Rory is not what she imagined. The way that that opening part is written, however, was so over the top that I was just like, I wasn't really enjoying it. It's not my favorite writing style, and I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for Kat to like meet Rory and realize, oh, okay, it takes longer than you might think. It's a good third of the book, and I really just didn't enjoy that. It was very overwritten for me. It didn't endear me to Kat as a person, the way that she's talking about people and talking to people, trying to like dissuade her from her fantasy. And so I was just like, I don't like that. And then the scene in the club happens, and I'm like, oh boy, do I not like that at all. But I kept reading because I thought that this book was trying to do something very interesting with this idea, right? Because normally, this kind of insta-love storyline would have happened, and, Rory would have been Alexander and their eyes would have met. I'm not a really big fan of insta-love stories. I talked about that last week when I talked about That Summer Feeling by Bridget Morrissey. And so I appreciated that this book was trying to do something a little bit different with that storyline and with, the expectations that are set up by romance novels and rom-coms, that love is this kind of very over-the-top thing that can sometimes, again, help us to miss what is right in front of us. And I don't think the book did that successfully, and I think that the reason with that is that by the time like the whole front half of it had happened, I was so disconnected from this storyline that I was basically just wishing for it to be over. But I hung on because I wanted it to get better. And I don't think that it did. Once Kat realizes that Rory is not Alexander, I thought that she was quite like rude to him, which again was like really hard for me to read, because Rory is the sweetest little cinnamon bun. He is just written to be super quiet and nerdy science teacher, just like very effusive, happy Midwestern. I really didn't feel there was quite a bit of depth to his character. It was very two-dimensional, but he was far, far too sweet to accept the treatment that he was getting from Kat for reasons that weren't his fault. He was just being who he always was, and it was Kat who had made up this dream that he didn't meet. So that was hard to get through, and the whole story of them falling in love is more of Kat like realizing that she's put too much of her life into her business and into her work, and that she believes too much in rom-coms. And that was written kind of weird, because while I don't disagree that, you know, romance is not always sparks and fireworks, and there's something to be said for like the steady, you know, slow burn type of romance that she didn't really see as romance, it just, the way that she as a character talked about it really rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't want to get too much into the ending, but the novel did not end where I was hoping it was going to end. And again, that's not a bad thing, because what it was trying to do in the end, I think, was, again, complicate the story a little bit more. Like, it's not just about Kat, you know, accepting that love is different than what she thinks it is. There's other realities to this relationship that have to be dealt with. And I appreciated that, but it was written so clunkily that by the end I was just skimming and I wanted it to be over. And I kept hoping and waiting for like one scene or something to redeem it, and it never happened. Obviously, this book wasn't written so poorly that I like abandon it, but I would not give it to somebody as a recommendation. I just kept reading and hoping and wishing, and it never turned out. And especially if you don't want to read a book with an explicit sexual harassment assault scene, don't do it. I think there's a lot to talk about with this book. I think it was trying to do some really interesting things and say some really interesting things, but some of it also just doesn't jive with my worldview. So I just had a lot of trouble with these characters, with the plot, with what it was saying to me. And I thought it could be better. I wanted it to be better. Maybe Lindsay McMillan's next book will be better, but this one was just not it for me. Really don't like doing negative reviews, but I kind of just felt like I wanted to put this out there just in case anyone is looking for a review, particularly because the book does involve a very explicit scene of sexual harassment. And I know that that was not, like, I didn't see that as something that was warned about in the beginning, and I do want people to know that just in case. But otherwise, you know, there is a book for every reader. This just wasn't a book for me. The fact that I did this review did save you from some random nonfiction content. So if you ever see that, that is because I have missed a romance, or there's been one that I've read and I didn't have any feelings about. Because I'm not going to do a review of a book I have no feelings about. I just can't do it. I can't make it up. So even though I'm not really happy with having to do a negative review, I have reviewed another arc on my list, and we are still rolling. Thanks, guys. Bye.